Welcome to People First by AllVoices. I'm your host, Jeffrey Fermin, and with me from the complete other side of the world, I am joined by, right? Because I'm all the way in Florida. You're all the way.
We're pretty far away from each other, yeah.
I am joined by Matt McFarlane of Foundation. Matt, tell us a little bit what you're working on and just a little bit of your background, because I got to know you through your. Funny enough, you're like knowledge in the startup world, and also you're like what, the seventh most influential person in Australia behind like the prime minister and stuff.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit more about
It's
that.
there's only 10 of us, so it's not that hard, but I appreciate the intro. So yeah, my name's Matt. Really quick intro, I guess. My background is people operations, mostly in startups. I was one of the weirdos who really likes compensation, and that's kind of what I've made my career out of since. So for the last couple of years, I've been running my own organization called Foundation and helping startups build pay practices that are clear, fair, and competitive. So that keeps me occupied 99% of the time. And then the other 1% of the time, I decided to kick off another business this year called Startup People Summit, which is all around trying to create more community and content and stuff for APAC people, professionals, ironically in startups. So yeah, that keeps me busy 110% of the time.
Yeah, man. And how is the startup scene over there in Australia? I mean, obviously I'm biased and say here in the States, we have all the great startups, but pushing my bias to the side, I want to hear how the scene is over there.
Yeah, I mean, look, you do, and I think a lot of one way of saying or describing the Australian startup scene is that we are like strong. We definitely punch above our weight in terms of like, investments and returns and things like that. But we are an early stage startup type of environment, I would say. So we tend to have a lot of like seed early stage companies, and then they do tend to travel over to the US if they want to get serious. It's a nice big market there. And yeah, I think that's, Canva's the latest one that's on their way over there to IPOs. So that tends to be the trajectory for a lot of Australian organizations. So, but no, it's a vibrant ecosystem. There's a lot of innovation. There's a lot of ingenuity. So I love seeing some of the stuff that's happening in the various different tech industry sectors. So it's a good place to be a part of.
All right. I look forward to going over there and just like meeting some of you all. Obviously, yeah, I mentioned that I know, the folks over at Hoogly, and yeah, who knows? Maybe I'll make my way over there. Yeah, AllVoices to sponsor a trip, hopefully. First class.
Absolutely. Yeah. I wouldn't have it any other way.
With that said, moving on to today's main topic, it's really around the future of work. You're obviously pushing, a very, I feel like a good conversation around, compensation. We've previously discussed future of work and how things could look like, the role of fractional employees. Like we've discussed so much. Oh my God, I forgot to mention our last conversation, and I probably should have started with this. Our last conversation, we actually had discussed like what employee life could look like after AI has taken over. Is a 3-day work week going to be a thing, 4-day work week, all that stuff? Let me land the plane here and say, like, where do you see the future of work going? And I know that's a very broad question, but give us like 3 or 5 different things out there that could kind of say like, oh, well, work is going to look like this in the near future.
Yeah, it's a good question. I was joking with someone about this the other day because I kind of got this question from a HR colleague when I was in Sydney, and they're like, what do you see this like future of work going? And honestly, I have no idea. I think like nobody does. There's kind of like everyone's having a punt on what they think might be it, and I'm happy to to wax lyrical about it. But I think we're just still at the very start of what is going to be a real evolution in the way we work and things like that. Gosh, where do I start in terms of the things that I'm thinking about with respect to future of work? I think one of the more prominent ones and I'll say I've been thinking about this a lot, but I don't have any answers yet. So it's just still something that I'm like, how do we deal with this? But I obviously think a lot about AI. I think I would be, like most people on listening to this podcast, most people in our profession, I think a lot of us feel like we're constantly playing catch up, or we're constantly trying to learn what the latest thing is. We're constantly trying to learn, what's hype versus what's real. We're obviously trying to balance that with a really strong like compliance obligation that comes with a lot of our roles as well. So to suffice to say, I'm thinking about AI a lot, but one of the things that I'm thinking about particularly of late is just like how much we're seeing it be able to amplify workers and employees and what it is that they can do. And I think I obviously spend a lot of time in the compensation space, and a real cornerstone of that is job architecture. Excuse me, what is a job? How do we define a job? How do we distinguish jobs from one another when it comes to things like seniority or the impact, excuse me, the impact that someone can have within an organization? I think one of the things that's got me particularly curious is how AI is accelerating that a lot. So, an example I was speaking about recently, there's a company called Lovable, which for those who aren't familiar with it, it's an AI, I think it probably is what popularized vibe coding. So you can type the thing that you want to create, the product you want to create into it, like it's ChatGPT, and in front of you live, it will start creating this product, which is incredible. And if you haven't started playing with it, I highly recommend it, even for like little internal tools. But something that struck me was that their head of growth, Elena Werner, who is relatively new in the role, was just talking about how much impact their team members are able to have, how much smaller their teams can be, and how much more efficient and effective they can be because they're enabled by AI, because they're able to come up with a concept, develop it, iterate it, in drastically shorter periods of time. And so I often think about like, how does that change roles where, arguably your earlier career folks are going to be the ones that are probably, and I'm making broad generalizations here, are probably going to be more likely to be the ones who are more aware of it, more savvy with it, more interested in it, more curious, like playing around with it a lot more. And so potentially their ability to to lean into this technology and have these kind of second, third, much higher order impacts across the business is amplified by this technology. When in contrast, and this is again, anecdotal, but my experience so far and in speaking with my network is that those who are more senior or those towards the top end of the organization maybe don't have as much of an impetus of a incentive to adopt some of these tools because they're in fairly senior roles, they're fairly high paid, they know of AI, but maybe there's less of a driver to take it on, and so their ability to be augmented in a similar way is reduced. And I just think, and this is like, I don't have an answer for this, but I definitely think about like, how do we reflect the fact that basically bringing this to a close, how do we reflect the fact that these younger, more savvy employees can potentially vibe code something up that can have the same kind of impact as someone with 10 or 20 years experience? Like, how do we reflect that in a job architecture? How do we reflect that in a compensation program? So that's kind of where my head's at the moment. I think, yeah, it's the wild, wild west of jobs. It feels like a little bit, and yeah, just excited to be part of the journey and see where it all lands, I think.
Yeah, so like a lot of interesting points. Maybe I'll tie those like by the way, this is full transparency. I make up a lot of these questions as I go. So for those listening, they're just gonna be like, wow, this guy Jeffrey doesn't know what he's talking about. But anyways, you brought up like a couple of interesting points there. I want to tie a couple of them together. You mentioned that like, you know, you're going to have potential entry level folks, and once again, these are generalizations. uh you're going to have entry level folks probably doing a little bit more because they're vibe coding and they're more willing to adapt to it. When it comes to compensation now, if they're able to produce just as much if not more than like somebody that's senior, how do you address that? Like if you're on the driver's seat or you're a manager, right? Like how do you say like, okay, this person Jeffrey is 2 years in, he is able to produce just as much as like somebody that I'm going to use Matt as a name here. Matt has 8 years in here. He's a little bit more tenured, but Jeffrey's a little bit more creative, innovative, and he's able to produce something that's better than Matt. Sorry, Matt. Yeah, like how do you go around as a manager when it comes to compensation, and maybe should you do some kind of bonus system for it?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think it's particularly pertinent in an era of pay transparency where like increasingly more and more people are able to understand what the value is for their role, but potentially the value for others as well. I think the stigma around pay discussions is certainly reducing more and more each day. So, in essence, I guess what I'm trying to say is like it kind of reduces a company's ability to pay two people doing a similar job, or where there's an inverse where actually the lower paid person is doing more impactful work than the higher paid person. So these are all things that companies really need to be thinking about, is like, how do we value the work that we're doing, and how do we quantify it? Something else that, I guess, not to get into the specifics of like, do we use a bonus or do we do this or that? Because I think there's so many other questions that I would want to answer as a company first around like, how we value pay and things, how we value roles and things like that first. But I think something that I think about as a tangent to the role question is like, junior career people are coming into their roles obviously without a lack of a lot of organizational context. They don't have maybe a strong idea of how the industry works, or the real depth of their profession. Whereas those people, the Matts with the 8 or 10 or 12 years experience or whatever, they probably do have that. And so I guess where my head goes is just like, how do we create some kind of a partnership? And I immediately go, from a tech background, to things like pair programming, right? Where like you've kind of got two people that are solving a problem together. Is that a potential solution here where, you've got the incredible kind of AI capability of someone who's, more savvy in that sort of technology, but you can pair that with someone who's got the context and things like that? Because, knowledge is sort of cheap these days. It's kind of commoditized. It's really easy to prompt AI and get an answer and get some knowledge. But I think and I always don't know if I mix up the use of these terms, but like there's sort of the knowledge. I don't know if it's tacit knowledge that essentially comes from like, your ability to go, well, I've tried this and I've applied it, and from experience I can say that I need to evolve or adapt or something in this way. Basically that lived experience of like trying, failing, and trying again is inherent in these like more tenured professionals. So surely there's a way for these two cohorts to work together to actually optimize into something better than just, each of them are in isolation. And I think one of the challenges we're seeing a lot in workplaces at the moment, I mean, was it Accenture were sort of famously, the famous example this week of letting go 11,000 people, I think it is, because they didn't have AI skills. So inherent, like I would want to look at that cohort and say, well, maybe they don't have the AI skills, but do they have all of this other knowledge that could actually help the people that do have AI skills? Anyway, so there's a lot of different things that I think things to consider in the world of work that I think are kind of being glossed over for the sake of like AI, abundance and wanting to embed AI in the organization.
And we're treating this this is just my opinion here, but we're treating AI too much as a magic bullet, and saying like,
Yeah.
okay, the answer is very much like remove people that aren't AI first or AI knowledgeable, and the folks that could capitalize off of like using AI and increase productivity and obviously through that profit margins. Those are the people that are going to stay with here. But then there's companies like Zapier. We've been doing a lot of stuff with them. They're 97% like AI trained company, and now they're kind of hitting a stride, and from a marketing standpoint, from a business standpoint, where like now they're covering different like realms, and they're going after like HR automation things. But whole nother conversation, whole other time. I do want to talk a little bit more about how AI is streamlining things. I feel like you're a startup person. I'm like just like you. I've probably read books like or I'm assuming that you've read books like Dan Reese's, Lean Startup, all those type of books that just kind of discuss a lot around efficiency and maximizing your efficiency as a employee, as a founder, whatever the case may be. That said, do you see AI kind of amplifying this, where we're going to try and take on so much work as individuals, where it could, the pros and cons of that, right? Like, will it lead to like max productivity, but could it also lead to max burnout? And how can we prevent, or how could we both advocate for like those pros and also avoid some of those cons, which are burnout and those things, with the use of AI?
Yeah, it's a good question. Look, I think at the moment, Unfortunately, with the way the market is in a lot of our markets, in certainly my market, I think very much in the US market, it really is an employer's playground in terms of being able to find the talent that they need. I think a lot of people are, well, the data I'm seeing at the moment suggests a lot of people are staying put because it's a little bit of a shaky environment. So, for me, given that, the half glass empty part of me, the devil's advocate part of me, says that I think we're going to see a lot of the efficiencies from AI go to the bottom line for companies. So, I know at the start we talked about things like 4-day work week and things like that. I think, unfortunately, I don't see that being something that's likely to come to fruition anytime soon. I think, if anything, actually, we're seeing the opposite. I don't know if you've heard terms like 996 thrown around in Silicon Valley. And I know a lot of people that are working those sorts of hours say that they do it because they love it and they enjoy it, and that's great. I think that's one component of ensuring you aren't burnt out, is that you're working on things that you enjoy and you feel progress and things like that. But it definitely feels like we're going a little bit the other way when it comes to this kind of thing. And then, yeah, I mean, where else are we going to go? I think the other thing I was going to say around this is just there was a kind of widely popularized example here in Australia of a fairly prominent insurer, health insurance company, that trialed the 4-day work week. And I actually spoke to someone from the company that helped them evaluate it and get it in place and assess whether or not it was effective and things like that. And interestingly, the report at the other side of this trial was that it actually had a net positive. The company either maintained or improved, productivity and outcomes and things like that. It was certainly better from an employee experience perspective. And the decision at the end of it was that because they either maybe in brackets or in quotes didn't want to or couldn't look at applying this to kind of frontline workers, they made the decision to revert everybody back to the 5-day work week. And I found that astounding, that in an environment where we've trialed it, the data has shown that it's effective, it's a net positive for the company. We still kind of revert to the status quo, and we still revert to this 5-day work week. So I think there's a lot of there's such huge cultural obsession with 5-day work weeks. I spoke with another former co-founder just yesterday, and he was saying that the company that he just chose to leave, and the reason he chose to leave was because so basically they're going for fundraising, and they were advised that because they have a 4-day work week, that may not be looked upon greatly by potential investors. And so as a result, they've abandoned the 4-day work week. They've gone back to the 5-day work week. And so he's decided to take his leave as a result of it. But yeah, I think we've got this huge cultural thing to get over. It's not even is this better for our companies? Is it better for our people? We seem to be really stuck spinning our wheels in this 5-day work week concept. So I think all of that is to say is that we've got a lot of work to do. I think, getting comfortable with the concept and looking at it from a change management perspective culturally before we see it start to become the norm within workplaces, unfortunately.
No doubt this is a massive inflection point. Things can either go really great for employees in the near future or very stressful. Last question, and it's really not a question. It's just kind of a thought experiment. Figured we kind of I want to go a little zany with this one. Let's go let's go 10 years in the future. Let's go full sci-fi mode. I know it's morning over there. It's nighttime here. I'm going to go watch a Netflix movie, maybe Terminator or something. But let's go sci-fi mode right now and say, what does the future of work look like 10 years if everything goes right with AI, employees, employee rights, however you want to deem it. And then also let's go with the negatives. What's the worst that could happen? Is there going to be kind of a job market similar to now where it's kind of very flimsy? Or are there going to be less companies around, more employees, and jobs will be kind of, I don't know. I want you to use your full imagination and go buck wild. And let's start with the good, and then let's scare people with the bad.
I'll leave him on the.
I'll leave him on a gloomy note.
I think one thing I would say is that I think in 10 years we're going to see much more of an acceleration of a trend that I'm already seeing, which is this move to sort of, to fractional, to more portfolio careers. I think the very things that are impacting a lot of the junior entry level career opportunities, AI is going to create opportunity for those people who are, who are young, who are hungry, who are, so full of ideas and creativity, and now have all of these incredible tools to bring them to life. I mean, God, if I had those sorts of things when I was just leaving university, I don't know where I would be. But all that is to say is that I think the norms around, going to university, getting your, entry level job and working, your way up the ladder, I think all of that is about to be disrupted. And I think from a positive place, it's obviously a hard thing to swallow right now. But yeah, I think the very thing that's gonna take away opportunity in that traditional model is going to create it in this new model where people can be a lot more innovative, can have a lot more opportunity to kind of be their own boss. So that's one positive thing that I think, because speaking from experience, I love being my own boss. I love the flexibility, all that sort of stuff. So I think that'll be a positive part of the change. On the negative, I don't know if it's a negative. I mean, I think it's all about perspective, right? But I think it's really going to bite companies in the ass a little bit when we see the impact of some of the decisions they're taking now. I mean, not having a junior workforce now, if adopted by most companies, which we're seeing a lot of, where in 10 years' time, someone's a mid-level developer or someone's a mid-level in their career, that's a whole generation of the workforce that are potentially not available. I think it'll create opportunity for those who want to, consult in or whatever. But yeah, that's something that I think is curious. I also think, leadership, I'm seeing a lot of, data around not only a lack of interest in becoming a manager. I'm seeing a lot of companies, reduce levels of leadership as well, and kind of reduce the number of middle managers that they have. So I think we're probably going to see a real, absence of leadership capability as well. So that's obviously a negative from a company's perspective, but on the flip side, it creates great opportunity for people who want to come in and fill that gap. So I think we'll probably see the market swing back in the way of, in the favor of employees or workers in that sense. But yeah, it's going to be a hard time for companies, unless of course, AI really does come to the table and solves all our problems, but that still remains to be seen.
Yeah, I hope it really does solve all the problems, that we could all just like hang out at the beach all day and we all become content creators. I always thought that would end up happening, where back when I was working at butterfly.ai, a frontline poll survey tool, they kind of or the investors strongly believe that the future of work is going to be one where we're all like content creators and people like that are actively online and just like creating things, whether you kind of see it now with like LinkedIn or just going out and giving speeches. And that is essentially will be our roles, where we're all representative of companies and we're promoting their missions and values to create a better world. Sounds a little too futurist, in my opinion, but who knows? We don't know where the world's going to go right now. As mentioned, it is kind of this unique inflection point. But all I have to say is, Matt, you're doing great stuff. I look forward to posting this. And yeah, do you want to leave us with anything before we jet on out of here?
I think it's just, you got to be kind of open to anything and everything. You got to be curious. You got to be keen to give anything a go. But yeah, it's going to be a wild, future of work. So I'm here for it.
Oh, yeah. Matt, you'll always have friends over here in the States with AllVoices. Feel free to come by whenever. All right, brother?
Appreciate it. Thanks.